Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead and cursed under his breath. The air filtration unit was being stubborn again, and he was running out of patience. He lay on his back under the metal panel, grease covering his hands and staining his uniform. The wrench slipped for the third time, and he barely avoided smashing his knuckles against the pipe. "Stupid piece of junk," he muttered. "They send us halfway across the galaxy. But they can't give us equipment that actually works." Jake was a maintenance engineer on the Odyssey, a human exploration ship. He was not important. He was not a scientist, or a soldier, or a diplomat. He fixed things when they broke. That was his job. And he was good at it. Even when the equipment fought back, today was supposed to be a big day. The Odyssey had arrived at the Zhara homeworld for the first diplomatic meeting between humans and the Zhara Empire. The Zhara controlled dozens of star systems and had a reputation for being tough warriors. They did not think much of other species. Most aliens who met them came away feeling small and unimportant. Ambassador Patricia Wells was in charge of the human delegation. She had been preparing for months, practicing speeches and studying Zhara culture. Captain Nathan Brooks commanded the ship and made sure everything went smoothly. They were both nervous, though they tried not to show it. This meeting could change everything for humanity. Jake did not care much about politics. He just wanted to fix the air filter before the Zhara delegation arrived at the docking bay. The last thing anyone needed was bad air, making the aliens think humans could not even maintain their own ships. He grabbed a different wrench and tried again. The bolt finally started to turn. "There we go," he said to himself. "See? Just needed the right touch." He did not hear the doors open. He did not hear the footsteps, or the voices speaking in a language that sounded like musical chimes, mixed with low growls. He was too focused on the bolt, and too deep under the panel to notice anything else. "Where is the human delegation?" a voice said in perfect English, though it came from a translator device. Jake froze. That was not a human voice. It was too deep. Too resonant. He suddenly remembered where he was. And what day it was. The Zhara had arrived early. "Oh no," he whispered. He tried to slide out from under the panel as quickly as possible, but his shirt caught on a piece of metal. He yanked it free, which only made more grease smear across his chest. When he finally got out and stood up, he found himself face to face with the Zhara Queen. She was massive. Jake was 6 feet tall, but she towered over him by at least 2 feet. Her skin was covered in iridescent scales that shifted colors in the light, going from deep purple to bright blue. She had 4 arms, each ending in hands with 3 long fingers. Her eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils like a cat. She wore elaborate armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, decorated with symbols Jake did not recognize. Behind her stood 6 guards, each nearly as tall as the Queen. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. They looked like they could tear through a steel wall without much effort. Jake stood there, covered in grease, holding a wrench, his hair sticking up at odd angles. He probably looked like the least dignified human the Zhara had ever seen. He started to say. "I'm sorry, I was just fixing." He never got to finish his sentence. The Queen's golden eyes went wide, her mouth opened slightly, showing sharp teeth. For a moment, Jake thought she was angry. He wondered if he had just caused an intergalactic incident by being too dirty and disrespectful. Then Queen Shakara did something that no one expected. She dropped to one knee, her head bowed low. Her 4 arms crossed over her chest in a gesture that looked important and formal. The guards behind her immediately followed, all 6 of them taking a knee and bowing their heads. Jake stared. His brain could not process what was happening. He looked down at himself, still holding the wrench, still covered in grease. He looked at the Queen, who remained kneeling. He looked back at the docking bay entrance, where Ambassador Wells and Captain Brooks had just arrived with the rest of the diplomatic team. They all stood frozen, their faces showing the same confusion Jake felt. "Your Majesty?" one of the Zhara guards said carefully. "Is something wrong?" The Queen did not move. She spoke in her own language, her voice filled with emotion. The translator on her armor crackled to life. "The bearer walks among us again," it said. Jake had no idea what that meant. Bearer of what? He was holding a wrench. Not anything special or important. I think there's been a mistake, he said. I'm just a maintenance guy. I fix air filters. You probably want to talk to the ambassador. He pointed at Patricia Wells, who looked just as lost as he felt. The Queen finally raised her head, her golden eyes locked onto Jake's face with an intensity that made him want to step back. But something in her expression stopped him. It was not anger or contempt. It was something else. Something like wonder or hope or maybe even fear. There is no mistake, the Queen said through her translator. You carry the mark of the preservers. I can see it. We all can see it. The what? Jake asked. The preservers, the Queen repeated. The ancient ones who saved my people. The ones who vanished long ago with a promise to return. Jake looked at Ambassador Wells for help. She looked back at him with the same helpless expression. No one had prepared for this. Nothing in the briefings mentioned preservers or marks or anything that would explain why an alien queen was kneeling in front of a maintenance engineer. Captain Brooks stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, perhaps we should discuss this in a more formal setting. I'm sure we can clear up any confusion. There is no confusion, the Queen interrupted. She stood up, and her guards followed. Even standing, she kept her posture respectful, almost reverent. This human must be treated as an honored guest. He will stay in the royal palace. We will provide everything he needs. Wait, what? Jake said. No, I can't. I have work to do. I still need to finish this air filter. The Queen looked at the panel Jake had been working under. She said something in her language to one of her guards, who immediately approached the panel. My people will complete the repair, she said. You will come with us. My people will complete the repair. It was not a request. It was a command, spoken with the authority of someone who ruled star systems. Jake looked at the wrench in his hand, then at Captain Brooks, then back at the Queen. This was not how he expected his day to go. He expected to fix some equipment, maybe grab lunch with his friend Danny, and stay as far away from the diplomatic meetings as possible. Instead, an alien queen was treating him like some kind of religious figure, and he had absolutely no clue why. Okay, he said slowly, because he could not think of anything else to say. But can someone please tell me what's going on? The Queen smiled, which on Ajara looked strange but not unfriendly. All will be explained, she said. The bearer has returned. After 10,000 years, the promise is fulfilled. Jake had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more complicated. The royal palace was nothing like Jake had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. Hallways stretched in directions that made his eyes hurt to follow. Everything was too big. Built for people much taller than humans, he felt like a child walking through a building made for giants. Two Jara servants walked beside him, neither one speaking. They had brought him to a room that they called his quarters, though it looked more like a luxury hotel suite than any bedroom Jake had stayed in before. The bed alone was larger than his entire cabin on the Odyssey. Jake sat on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. Nothing made sense. A few hours ago, he was fixing an air filter. Now, he was in an alien palace, being treated like some important person. The Jara servants kept bowing to him, which made him deeply uncomfortable. There was a knock on the door. Before Jake could answer, it slid open. Captain Brooks entered, followed by Ambassador Wells. Both looked tired and frustrated. Jake, the captain said, sitting down in one of the chairs that was just slightly too large for a human. We need to talk. I don't know what's happening, Jake said immediately. I didn't do anything. I was just working. We know, Ambassador Wells said. She pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed text in both English and Zara symbols. We've been trying to get answers from the Zara officials. They won't tell us much. But they did give us this. It's from their historical records. Jake leaned forward to read. The text talked about beings called the Preservers who came to the Zara homeworld thousands of years ago. At that time, the Zara were dying from a plague. Their entire civilization was collapsing. The Preservers arrived, cured the disease, and saved their species. Then they left, promising to return someday. Okay, Jake said slowly. But what does that have to do with me? I'm not a preserver. I'm from Ohio. My dad works in a factory. I barely graduated high school. That's what we told them, Captain Brooks said. But Queen Shikara insists you're different. She says you have some kind of mark that proves you're connected to these preservers. What mark? Jake looked at his hands, his arms. He did not see anything unusual. I don't have any weird birthmarks or tattoos. Not a physical mark, Ambassador Wells said. She's talking about something in your genetics. Your DNA. Jake felt cold. My DNA? How would she know anything about my DNA? We just met. We don't know, the captain admitted. But she's absolutely convinced. She won't discuss the treaty with us. She won't negotiate about anything. She says she'll only speak with you. That's insane, Jake said. I don't know anything about diplomacy or treaties. I fix machines. That's all I do. Ambassador Wells looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and frustration. Jake, I know this is difficult. But right now, you're the key to this entire mission. If you don't cooperate, we might lose our chance at an alliance with the Jara. Do you understand what that means? Jake understood. The Jara Empire was powerful. An alliance could protect humanity from other hostile species. It could open up trade routes and technology exchanges. Everything humanity had worked for with this mission depended on making a good impression, and somehow, that all landed on him. What do you want me to do? He asked. Talk to the Queen, Captain Brooks said. Find out what she wants. Find out why she thinks you're important. We'll have our medical team analyze your DNA, see if there's anything unusual. In the meantime, play along. Be respectful. Don't cause any problems. Jake wanted to argue, but he could see the stress on both their faces. This was bigger than him. He nodded slowly. After they left, Jake lay back on the enormous bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about calling his parents back on Earth. But what would he even say? He tried to sleep but could not. His mind kept spinning with questions that had no answers. The next morning, servants brought him breakfast. The food was strange. Some of it looked familiar, while other dishes were completely alien. He ate what he could and tried to be polite. Then the servants told him the Queen was ready to see him. They led him through more hallways until they reached a large room with windows that showed the Zara city below. Queen Shikara stood by the window, looking out at her world. When Jake entered, she turned and dismissed the servants with a wave of one hand. Please, sit, she said, gesturing to a chair. Jake sat, feeling like a kid called to the principal's office. The Queen settled into her own chair, all four of her arms resting comfortably. You are confused, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Jake admitted. I don't understand any of this. Why did you kneel? What's a bearer? What are preservers? The Queen was quiet for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. 10,000 years ago, my people were dying. A plague swept through our world, killing millions. Our greatest scientists could not stop it. We faced extinction. She paused, her golden eyes distant with memory, though Jake knew she had not been alive back then. These were stories passed down through generations. Then they came, she continued, beings who looked different from us, but who came with kindness and knowledge. They studied our plague. They created a cure. They saved us. We called them the preservers because they preserved our existence. And you think I'm one of them? Jake asked. Not exactly, the Queen said. The preservers left long ago. But they left something behind, a database of their genetic patterns. They told us that someday, someone carrying their mark would return. That person would be proof that the preservers had not forgotten us. She stood and walked to a wall panel. She pressed something, and the wall lit up with images. They were old and damaged, but Jake could see figures that looked vaguely humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, roughly the same proportions as humans, though the images were too unclear to see details. When I saw you, the Queen said. I recognized you. Not your face, but something deeper. The palace has sensors, very old sensors, built by the preservers themselves. They scan every being who enters. They detected your genetic signature. She turned to face him directly. You carry the mark of the preservers in your blood. That is why I knelt. That is why you are honored here. The Ford and Setif send. That is why honored here. That is why I knelt. The morning and Segenere. The morning the Ford. The morning the fording the more. Jake felt like the room was spinning. But I'm just human. We're from Earth. We only left our planet a few decades ago. We couldn't have been here 10,000 years ago. That's impossible. Is it? The Queen asked. Perhaps you do not know your own history. Perhaps your people forgot who they once were. Before Jake could respond, there was an urgent knock on the door. A Jara official entered, speaking rapidly in their language. The Queen's expression changed, becoming more serious. What's wrong? Jake asked. News has spread, the Queen said. Other species have heard about you. About what you represent. The Krell Federation has sent ships. They want to know if humans are truly the preservers returned. Are they friendly? Jake asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Krell were rivals of the preservers. Long ago, the Queen said. If humans carry that legacy, they will see you as a threat. Jake felt his stomach drop. He came on this mission to fix equipment and stay out of trouble. Now, somehow, he had become the center of a potential conflict between alien empires. I need to contact my ship, he said, standing up. The Queen nodded. Of course. But Jake Morrison, you must understand something. You cannot run from this. Whatever the truth is about you, about your people, it has already changed everything. The galaxy is watching. Jake walked to the window and looked out at the alien city below. Somewhere up in orbit, the Odyssey waited. His friend Danny was probably worried about him. The medical officer, Lisa Chang, was probably running tests trying to figure out what made him special. But the truth was, Jake did not feel special. He felt like a man caught in a current too strong to fight, being pulled towards something he could not see or understand. And the worst part was not knowing if he was really connected to these ancient preservers, or if this was all some terrible mistake that would end badly for everyone. Either way, his simple life was over. The medical bay on the Odyssey was crowded. Dr. Helen Price stood over a scanner displaying Jake's genetic information in holographic detail. Beside her, biologist Chris Yang compared the data to human baseline samples. Captain Brooks, Ambassador Wells, and Lisa Chang watched from nearby. Jake sat on the examination table, feeling like a lab rat. This is incredible, Helen said, her voice filled with excitement and confusion. Jake, your DNA has markers I've never seen in anyone else. These sequences are ancient, older than recorded human civilization. What does that mean? Jake asked. He had been poked, scanned, and tested for the past 3 hours. He was tired and wanted answers that made sense. Chris pulled up another display. All humans share common ancestors, but your genetic line goes back further than most. Way further. We're talking about sequences that date back over 200,000 years to some of the earliest modern humans on Earth. So I'm just really old blood? Jake said. That's it? Not exactly, Helen said. These particular markers are extremely rare. We're talking about less than 1 in 10,000 people having even a trace of them. You have them in concentration. It's like your family line has been preserving these genes for thousands of generations. Ambassador Wells stepped closer. Could these be the same genetic patterns the Jara are detecting? Possibly, Chris said. If the preservers were human, and they left Earth 200,000 years ago or more, they would have carried these genetic markers with them. The question is how humans could have developed space travel that long ago without leaving any archaeological evidence. Unless they did leave evidence, Captain Brooks said quietly. And we just didn't recognize it. Or couldn't find it. Jake felt a headache forming. So you're saying I might actually be descended from ancient space travelers? That sounds like bad science fiction. A week ago, I would have agreed with you, Helen said. But look at the evidence. The Jara have records of humanoid preservers from 10,000 years ago. You have genetic markers dating back way further than that. The math adds up in a very uncomfortable way. Lisa Chang had been quiet until now. She was Jake's friend, someone he had worked with for 2 years on the Odyssey. She looked concerned. Jake, how do you feel? Any strange symptoms? Headaches? Visions? Anything unusual? Just stress, Jake said. Everything about this is strange. A message alert chimed. Captain Brooks checked his communication device and frowned. We have a problem. 3 Krell ships just entered the system. They're demanding to speak with Jake. Absolutely not, Ambassador Wells said immediately. We don't know their intentions. The Jara fleet is moving to intercept, the captain said. Queen Shkara is refusing to let the Krell approach the planet while Jake is here. This could turn into a battle. Jake jumped off the table. Then I need to talk to them. If this is about me, I should be the one to handle it. You're a maintenance engineer, not a diplomat, Ambassador Wells said. And that's exactly why they might listen to me, Jake argued. I'm not trying to play politics or gain power. I just want to stop a war from starting because of me. Captain Brooks considered this. He looked at Ambassador Wells, who reluctantly nodded. Fine, the captain said. But we're doing this on our terms. Controlled communication, with armed security nearby. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the Odyssey's communication center. The main screen showed a Krell commander. The Krell looked nothing like the Jara. They had hard, shell-like skin in mottled gray and brown. Their faces were flat, with multiple eyes arranged in a circular pattern. They spoke through clicking sounds that the translator turned into rough English. Human Jake Morrison, the Krell commander said. I am Commander Vex. We have heard interesting claims about your people. We wish to know the truth. What truth? Jake asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Are humans the preservers returned? Vex asked bluntly. The Jara believe so. If this is true, it changes the balance of power in this region of space. Jake looked at Captain Brooks, who nodded slightly. Be honest, I don't know, Jake said. I'm just a regular person. I fix equipment on this ship. But our scientists found something in my DNA that's very old. It might connect to beings who traveled space a long time ago. We're still trying to understand it ourselves. The preservers were not friends to all species, Vex said. They had favorites. The Jara were helped, but others were not. If humans carry that legacy, we must know your intentions. We don't have any intentions, Jake said. We're explorers. We're trying to meet new species and build relationships. We're not here to conquer anyone or pick favorites. Words are easy, Vex said. Proof is harder. The preservers had technology beyond understanding. If you are their descendants, show us. Prove your heritage. Jake spread his hands helplessly. I can't. I don't have any special technology or powers. I'm just a guy who happens to have old genes. That's all I can tell you. The Krell commander was silent for a long moment. This is unsatisfying. But perhaps it is truth. The preservers were said to have fallen. Their civilization destroyed by war among themselves. Perhaps you are what remains, reduced and diminished. If so, you are no threat. The communication ended abruptly. Captain Brooks let out a breath he had been holding. Well, he said, that went better than expected. They think we're weak, Ambassador Wells said. Is that better? It's better than them thinking we're a threat, Jake said. Over the next 2 days, more revelations came. The science team analyzed historical records from Earth, looking for anything that might explain advanced humans in prehistory. They found anomalies, structures that seemed too sophisticated for their time period, genetic bottlenecks in human population that did not match natural patterns. Stories and myths from dozens of cultures about gods or ancestors who came from the stars. None of it was proof. But together, it painted a troubling picture. Jake spent time with Queen Shakara, learning more about the preservers. She showed him the ancient temple, where preserver technology still functioned. The devices looked both organic and mechanical, made from materials human science could not identify. Some chambers still had power after 10,000 years. They built things to last, the Queen said as they walked through glowing corridors. Everything they made was meant to endure. They told us they would return, and they left these places as proof of their promise. But they didn't return, Jake said. Not for thousands of years. Something must have happened to them. Daughterment, yes, the Queen agreed. We have theories. War, perhaps. Or plague. Or simply time and distance. Space is vast. Perhaps they meant to return but could not. They entered a central chamber where a large device stood, dormant but somehow still humming with subtle energy. The Queen approached it reverently. This is the awakening chamber, she said. The preservers used it to store information, not in computers, but in genetic memory. They said that one day, a bearer would come who could access what was stored here. Jake looked at the chamber nervously. And you think I can use it? I do not know, the Queen said, but I would like to try. If you are willing. What would it do to me? Jake asked. The records say it unlocks memories carried in genetic code. Memories passed down through bloodlines. It is dangerous, possibly fatal, but it may answer all our questions. Jake thought about his friend Danny, who told him not to take unnecessary risks. He thought about Lisa, who worried about his health. He thought about his parents back on Earth, simple people who would not understand any of this. But he also thought about the Krell ships waiting in the outer system, about other species who would come with questions and demands, about the Jara, who had waited 10,000 years for a promise to be fulfilled. If I do this, Jake said slowly, and it works, we'll know the truth. About the preservers, about humans, about everything. Yes, the Queen said. But you may not like what you learn. Truth is not always kind. Jake looked at the awakening chamber. It was built by hands that might have been human, ancestors so ancient they were forgotten. If there were answers about who humans really were, they might be locked inside him, waiting to be found. I need time to think, he said. Of course, the Queen said. But do not take too long. The galaxy is watching, and patience has limits. That night, Jake sat in his quarters on the Odyssey. Danny brought him coffee and sat beside him. You're thinking about doing it, aren't you? Danny said. The awakening thing. Maybe, Jake said. It's dangerous. You could die. I know. Then why risk it? Jake was quiet for a moment. Because I need to know. Not for the Jara or the Krell, or even for humanity. I need to know for myself. Who am I really? Am I just a maintenance guy who got lucky with genetics? Or am I part of something bigger? Danny sighed. You're an idiot. Probably. But you're my friend, Danny said. So if you're going to do this, at least let me be there when you do. Jake smiled despite his fears. Deal. The decision was made. The ancient temple was quiet as Jake walked through its corridors. Queen Shkera led the way, her 4 arms moving in graceful gestures that seemed almost ritualistic. Behind them came Danny, Lisa, Captain Brooks, and Ambassador Wells. The Jara had agreed to let them witness the awakening, though they warned that interference could be deadly. Last chance to back out, Danny whispered to Jake. I know, Jake replied, but he kept walking. The awakening chamber was exactly as he remembered. The device in the center looked like a pool made of crystalline material that glowed with soft blue light. Around it, walls covered with symbols pulsed in patterns that almost looked like breathing. The air felt thick, charged with energy that made Jake's skin tingle. The process is simple, Queen Shkara explained. You enter the pool. The device interfaces with your nervous system. What happens after that depends on what memories your genetics carry. How long does it take? Jake asked. The records say it lasted 3 hours for the preservers who used it. But you are different. It may be faster or slower. We cannot know. Lisa stepped forward with a medical scanner. I'll monitor your vital signs from outside the chamber. If anything goes wrong, we pull you out immediately. No, the Queen said firmly. Once the process begins, interruption could cause brain damage or death. You must let it complete. Lisa looked like she wanted to argue, but Captain Brooks put a hand on her shoulder. We knew the risks, he said quietly. Jake took off his jacket and shoes. He wore only simple clothes that would not interfere with the device. He approached the edge of the pool and looked down into the glowing liquid. It did not look like water. It moved like liquid but shimmered with internal light. Jake, Ambassador Wells said, whatever you see in there, remember who you are. Don't let ancient memories change you. He nodded, though he was not sure he could keep that promise. He looked at his friends one last time. Danny gave him a thumbs up that looked more worried than confident. Lisa clutched her medical scanner like a lifeline. Captain Brooks stood at attention, every bit the military officer trying to stay composed. Jake stepped into the pool. The liquid was warm and thick. It climbed up his legs as he walked deeper, reaching his waist, his chest, his shoulders. He took a deep breath and let himself sink completely under. At first, nothing happened. He floated in the warm liquid. His eyes closed, waiting. Then he felt a tingling sensation at the base of his skull. It spread down his spine and out through his limbs. The tingling became pressure, and the pressure became pain. He wanted to scream but could not. His muscles locked. His mind started to fill with images that were not his own. He saw Earth, but it was not the Earth he knew. Cities of light stretched across continents. Ships rose from the ground without sound, moving toward the stars. People walked the streets wearing clothes that seemed alive, changing colors and patterns. Technology and nature blended together in ways that seemed impossible. He saw the ships spreading out from Earth, carrying people to new worlds. Not just a few ships, but thousands. They found empty planets and made them into homes. They found struggling civilizations and helped them survive. Everywhere they went, they built and healed and taught. He saw the name they called themselves, not in English but in a language his mind suddenly understood. The Preservers was a translation. The real name meant something closer to those who keep the future alive. He saw them arrive at the Jara homeworld. The plague was worse than the Queen had described. Bodies filled the streets. Children cried for parents who would never wake up. The Preservers worked day and night, studying the disease, creating cures, saving millions. The Jara wept with gratitude and carved the faces of their saviors into stone monuments. But then the images grew darker. He saw the arguments begin. Some Preservers believed they should guide other species toward specific goals. Others believed every species should find its own path. The arguments became conflicts. Conflicts became violence. He saw ships fighting other ships in the darkness between stars. Weapons that could crack planets. Technology turned toward destruction instead of preservation. The civilization that had spread across dozens of star systems began to tear itself apart. He saw the fall. Cities burning. Ships crashing. The careful balance of technology and nature collapsing into chaos. Billions died. Human and alien alike. The great project of the Preservers ended in blood and ashes. He saw the survivors, a broken remnant of what had been. They made a choice. They destroyed their remaining technology. Unwilling to let it cause more harm, they returned to Earth, to the world they had left behind millennia ago. They found other humans still there, people who had never left, who lived simple lives close to the land. The survivors integrated with these earthbound humans. They became farmers, hunters, builders. They kept no records of what they had been. They passed down only fragments, stories that became myths, genetic memories buried so deep that most would never surface. But they also left something behind, a promise. Markers in their DNA that would persist through countless generations. A hope that someday, when humanity was ready, when they were wiser, the truth might resurface, not to rebuild the old empire, but to serve as a warning. To show that power without wisdom leads to destruction. Jake saw his own bloodline stretching back through time. Simple people, mostly. Farmers and craftsmen. Soldiers and merchants. None of them knew they carried the legacy of star travelers. But the genes persisted, passed from parent to child, waiting. The images began to fade. The pain in Jake's head started to recede. He felt himself becoming aware of his body again, floating in the warm liquid. His muscles relaxed. His breathing steadied. Hands grabbed him and pulled him up out of the pool. He gasped for air, coughing and shaking. Danny and Lisa supported him, helping him to the edge of the chamber. Someone wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Jake? Jake, can you hear me? Lisa's voice, urgent and worried. I'm okay, he managed to say, though his voice was hoarse. I'm okay. What did you see? Queen Shakara asked, kneeling beside him. What did the memories show you? Jake looked at her with new understanding. He saw past her alien features to the person beneath. He thought about her ancestors, dying from a plague, saved by humans from Earth who had traveled across the stars. He thought about the promise those humans had made and then abandoned when their civilization collapsed. I saw everything, he said. I saw who the preservers really were. What they became. Why they fell. He struggled to his feet, still shaky but determined to stand on his own. Everyone in the chamber was watching him. The Jara guards, Captain Brooks, Ambassador Wells, his friends. The preservers were human, Jake said. They left Earth maybe 200,000 years ago, or more. They spread across the galaxy, building and helping and teaching. They saved the Jara and other species. But they also fought among themselves. They had civil war. Their own technology destroyed them. All of them? The Queen asked quietly. No, Jake said. Some survived. They came back to Earth. They gave up their technology and became ordinary people again. They're our ancestors. All humans carry pieces of them, but some bloodlines, like mine, carry more of the genetic memory. He wrapped the blanket tighter around himself, feeling cold despite the warm chamber. The preservers didn't vanish because they forgot about you. They vanished because they nearly destroyed themselves. When they came back to Earth, they chose to start over, to let humanity develop naturally, without the burden of their mistakes. Then the promise was a lie? The Queen asked, and Jake could hear the pain in her voice. No, Jake said firmly. The promise was real. But it wasn't about returning as conquerors or saviors. It was about humans eventually finding their way back to the stars on their own terms, about proving we could do it again, but better this time, with wisdom instead of just power. Captain Brooks stepped forward. Jake, are you saying humans had space travel hundreds of thousands of years ago, and we lost it all? Yes, Jake said. And maybe that's the most important lesson. Technology alone doesn't make a civilization great. Knowing when to stop, when to rebuild, when to choose a different path, that's what matters. The chamber was silent as everyone processed this. The history they thought they knew was wrong. Humanity was not new to the stars. They were returning after a long absence, after generations of forgetting. Queen Shkara stood, and this time she did not kneel. She looked at Jake as an equal. Your ancestors saved my people, she said. Then they fell, and you rose again from their ashes. That is a story worth honoring. Not because you are mighty, but because you survived and learned. Jake nodded, still processing everything he had seen. The memories were fading now, becoming dreamlike. But the core truth remained. He understood who he was, not a chosen one or a returning god, just a human who carried the weight of a very old, very painful history. I need to tell Earth, he said. People need to know the truth. They may not believe you, Ambassador Wells said. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But they deserve to hear it anyway. We all do. Outside the temple, the Jara city lights were coming on as evening fell. Jake stood at a window, looking out at an alien world that his ancestors had visited so long ago. Somewhere out there, other species waited to see what humans would do with this knowledge. He hoped humanity would be wiser this time. The message from Earth arrived 3 days after Jake's awakening. He sat in Captain Brooks's office aboard the Odyssey, watching the holographic display as officials from Earth's government spoke. Their expressions were serious and excited at the same time. Jake Morrison, the Secretary General, said, "Your discovery changes everything. Humanity's connection to the Preservers makes us significant players in galactic politics. We're ordering you to return to Earth immediately for further testing and debriefing. You'll be working with our top scientists and diplomatic corps." Jake had expected this. He looked at Captain Brooks, who remained carefully neutral. "There's more," the Secretary General continued. "We want you to serve as humanity's official ambassador. Your genetic heritage gives you credibility with species like the Jara. You'll be the face of humanity's return to the stars." The message ended. Jake sat in silence for a moment. "They want to use you," Danny said from where he leaned against the wall. "Turn you into some kind of symbol. To indissymbol ride. To mated R. To indistance. It's not that simple," Ambassador Wells said. "Jake, this is a real opportunity. You could help secure humanity's future." "By pretending to be something I'm not?" Jake asked. "I'm not the Preservers. I'm just someone who happens to carry their genes." "That's not the same thing, but it means something to other species," Wells argued. "The Jara respect you. Other aliens are curious about you. That gives humanity leverage. Other created. The Jara respected The Jara respected Juzz around. The Jara respected Juzz around. The Jara respected Does around. The Zara respected Juzz. Jake stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Jara homeworld turned slowly below. He thought about everything he had seen in the awakening chamber. The rise and fall of a great civilization. The wars fought over power and pride. The final choice to abandon it all, rather than continue destroying. "I saw why they fell," Jake said quietly. "The Preservers had all the power they needed. They could travel the stars, cure diseases, build incredible things, but they couldn't agree on what to do with that power. Some wanted to rule, others wanted to serve. In the end, they killed each other over it." He turned to face the others. "If I go back to Earth and let them use me as a symbol of human superiority, we're making the same mistake. We'll be claiming a legacy we didn't earn, trying to use it for advantage. That's exactly what destroyed the Preservers." "So what do you want to do?" Captain Brooks asked. Before Jake could answer, another message came through. This one was from Queen Shkara. She was requesting an audience with Jake, urgently. 20 minutes later, Jake was back in the royal palace. The Queen waited for him in her private chambers, along with several Jara advisors. "Jake Morrison," she said, "I have a proposal for you. My people have discussed your situation. We believe you should stay here with us, as a liaison between humans and Jara." "Earth wants me to come back," Jake said. "I know," the Queen replied. "But consider this. If you return to Earth, they will make you into a political tool. They will use your heritage to push their agenda. Is that what you want?" Jake did not answer immediately. The Queen continued, "Here. You could do real work. Help build understanding between our species. Not as a symbol, but as a bridge. You understand both our histories now. You can help prevent the mistakes of the past from repeating." One of the advisors, an older Jara with silvery scales, spoke up. "The Preservers failed because they forgot their original purpose. They came to help, but they stayed to rule. You could remind us all of the difference." Jake thought about this. It was appealing in some ways. Stay away from Earth's politics. Do meaningful work. Honor the legacy without exploiting it. But it also felt like running away. "I need to think about it," he said. That evening, Jake met with his crewmates in a common area on the Odyssey. Danny brought coffee. Lisa brought medical reports she had been analyzing. Even Ambassador Wells and Captain Brooks joined them. "What are you going to do?" Danny asked. "I don't know," Jake admitted. "Earth wants me as a symbol. The Jara want me as a liaison. Neither option feels right. What feels right to you? Lisa asked. Jake was quiet for a long time. The preservers made something beautiful, then destroyed it. When the survivors came back to Earth, they chose to start over. They gave up power to give humanity a second chance. I think I need to respect that choice. How? Captain Brooks asked. By refusing to be anyone's tool, Jake said. Earth wants to use my genetics to claim superiority. But we're not superior. We're just the descendants of people who once had great power and chose to give it up. That humility, that wisdom, that's the real legacy. He looked at his friends. I'm not going back to Earth to be paraded around, and I'm not staying here to hide from difficult choices. I think there's a third option. Which is? Ambassador Wells asked. Help build something new, Jake said. The preservers failed because they worked alone, making decisions for other species. What if instead we build something together? Humans, Jara, maybe even the Krell and others. A real alliance where no one species leads. That's idealistic, Wells said. Maybe, Jake agreed. But the alternative is repeating old mistakes. I've seen where that leads. Over the next week, Jake worked with Queen Shakara, Captain Brooks, and Ambassador Wells to propose something unprecedented. A joint station in neutral space where multiple species could meet, trade, and cooperate. Not under human leadership or Jara leadership, but as equals. Earth's government was not happy. They sent angry messages demanding Jake return. Some called him a traitor. Others accused him of wasting humanity's opportunity. But Jake held firm. He spoke directly to Earth in a public broadcast, explaining what he had learned and why he was choosing this path. The preservers were human, he said to the cameras. They did amazing things, but they also failed. They fell because they let power corrupt them. We have a chance to do better, not by claiming we're special, but by acknowledging we're part of a larger community. The galaxy doesn't need humanity to be leaders or saviors. It needs us to be partners. Not everyone agreed, but enough people did. Public opinion on Earth shifted. Some saw wisdom in Jake's words. Others were just curious about this new approach. The Krell surprised everyone by agreeing to participate in the joint station project. Commander Vex sent a message explaining that the Krell respected strength, and choosing cooperation over conquest showed a different kind of strength. 6 months later, the station was taking shape. Jake stood in an observation deck, watching construction crews from 3 different species work together. The station was not beautiful yet, just framework and modules, but it was growing. Danny joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. Still think you made the right choice? Most days, Jake said. Some days I wonder if I should have just gone back to fixing air filters. Too late now, Danny said with a grin. You're stuck being important. Lisa arrived with a data pad. The latest reports from Earth. Your parents sent another message. They want you to know they're proud of you. Jake smiled. His parents, Carl and Susan, had been confused by everything at first. But in their last message, his father had said something that stuck with him. You're still our son who used to fix tractors. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Queen Shakara arrived, accompanied by 2 Zara engineers. She had become a regular visitor to the station, personally overseeing the Jara contributions. Jake Morrison. We have completed the cultural center. Would you like to see it? They walked through the station together, Jake and the Jara Queen, followed by Danny and Lisa. The cultural center was a large space designed to showcase the history and art of all participating species. In the center stood a monument. It was simple, made of stone brought from Earth and metal from the Jara homeworld. The inscription read, "In memory of those who came before, and in hope for those who come after. Let wisdom guide us where power could not." Close. The preservers would be proud, the Queen said. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe they'd just be relieved we learned from their mistakes. More ships arrived over the following weeks. Species Jake had never heard of, coming to see this experiment in cooperation. Some joined the project. Others just observed. But slowly, something new was taking shape. Not an empire or a kingdom, but a community. Jake's role evolved. He was not a leader or ambassador in the traditional sense. He was more like a reminder, a living connection to a history that warned against the dangers of unchecked power. When species argued over who should have more influence on the council, Jake would point to the monument and ask if they wanted to repeat the preserver's mistakes. It worked more often than it should have. There was something about Jake's plain honesty, his refusal to claim special status, that made others listen. 1 year after the station opened, Jake received permission to bring his parents from Earth for a visit. Carl and Susan Morrison walked through the corridors of the station with wide eyes, seeing their son in his strange new life. "It's a lot bigger than your workshop back home," his father said, looking around at the massive common area where humans, Jara, Krell, and others moved past each other peacefully. "A bit," Jake agreed. His mother hugged him. "Are you happy?" Jake thought about the question. He missed simple things. He missed fixing engines without the weight of history on his shoulders. He missed days when his biggest problem was a stubborn bolt, but he also saw what was being built here: different species learning to work together, children from a dozen worlds playing in the station's gardens. Technology being shared instead of hoarded. It was not perfect, and probably never would be. But it was something good. "Yeah, Mom," he said. "I think I am." That evening, Jake stood alone in the observation deck after his parents had gone to their quarters. He looked out at the stars and thought about the preservers. They had reached so far, traveled so long, helped so many, and then they fell. But they had also planted seeds. In their DNA, in their stories, in their hope that someday their descendants would try again and do it better. Jake was just a maintenance engineer from Ohio. He did not have special powers or cosmic wisdom, but he carried the memory of a great civilization's rise and fall. And maybe that was enough. A notification appeared on his wrist display. Another malfunction on level 12. The water recycling system needed attention. Jake smiled. Some things never changed. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the maintenance shafts. Behind him, the stars continued their ancient dance, and the station full of different species moved forward into an uncertain future. But they moved together, and that made all the difference.